What's the best hidden fandom around? An amazing fantasy world that spans games, novels, and soon, a video game. Why, it's Legend of the Five Rings, of course. The world of fantasy samurai. But where did it come from, and why are fans so obsessed with it? And where is it today? My name's Corey, and this is... In 2024, Shogun took America by storm, becoming one of the best dramas on television. Political drama, sword fighting, assassinations, and sex. It has it all. Wouldn't you like to take a part in that? That's the conceit of Legend of the Five Rings. To encapsulate Japanese feudal-era culture and drama, combine it with Asian fantasy elements like magic and demons to create a world and characters that you can not only get lost in, but identify with and participate in. That's right, I said participate. The fans have always had a contributing hand in sculpting the world of Legend of the Five Rings, and that continues to this day. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Legend of the Five Rings, or L5R for short, was created by a whole slew of people for Eldrac Entertainment Group and Isomedia in 1995. Ugh, these words. Okay. They wanted to create a card game to compete with Magic the Gathering, which was growing in popularity at the time. They imagined a world of noble samurai dueling each other on the battlefield for glory of their lord, and I gotta say, it was a bona fide hit. Instead of cards that had generic elves and goblins on them, L5R hung its hat on meaningful personalities like Hida Kasada, Bayushi Kachiko, and Doji Hattori. Each of these personalities belonged to an animal-themed clan, all vying for more power in their world. Baked into it from the beginning were stories of assassination, courtly intrigue, magic, war, and of course, sex. Fans began to gravitate towards their favorite characters and clans. It also helped that in the game, each clan had their own tactics and philosophy. People got so into their clan they began to identify with them, and still do to this day. The game had huge tournaments where players would support their clans in hope of winning a coveted story prize. Sure, there were cash prizes, but that's not what people cared about. It was the story prize that excited people. To win for your clan the chance to gain power and prestige by having one of your clan marry the emperor or become shogun, these were the things people cared about the most. It was a point of pride, not just for the characters in the game, but for the fans. The game soon expanded to other media, like my bread and butter, what we do here on the Dead Unicorn, the role-playing game club. Role-playing games, yeah, you guessed it. 2 years after the card game was released, the RPG dropped, competing in the same space as Dungeons & Dragons. It did so well it has 4 editions with a slew of supplement books and a very problematic Dungeons & Dragons conversion. The RPG took deep dives into the lore, giving details to all the clans and characters. It gave life to the world. And in a time where RPGs were more like combat simulators, L5R tried to bring courtly drama and social intrigue to RPGs. This made RPGs popular with women, which was a rarity in that day. That's right. Having a game appeal to all genders used to not be a priority. Crazy, right? Crazy. A few years later, all the way in the year 2000, the first novel dropped, and it was a banger. It told the iconic story of how the Lord of the Scorpion Clan, Bayushi Shoju, murders the Emperor in order to save the Empire. A really interesting take on a Julius Caesar situation, but with magic and a dark god. This changed everything. It was a bold choice that said to their fans that this world was not locked in amber. It was a changing, alive world. Once that genie popped out of the bottle, things were never the same. Minor clans became major clans. Gods died. Fan-favorite characters took their places. Rat people, snake people. The twists never stopped. And at the heart of it all were the fans, driving the action through the card game. And to a lesser extent, the RPG as well. All facets of the L5R world were beloved and gained great praise inside and outside of their niche. There were even a few board games published. Oh yeah, and there was a miniature game too. I tend to forget about that as it wasn't that popular. This all came to a halt in 2015 when Alderac Entertainment Group sold Legend of the Five Rings to Fantasy Flight Games. This drew the curtain closed on the original world of L5R. Just like Disney when they bought Star Wars, Fantasy Flight creative team decided to wipe away all of the expanded lore and retell the story from the beginning. Look, when a fictional world is around long enough, there will be iterations, different retellings. Do you even know how many versions of the Ninja Turtles exist? And L5R had its own alternate worlds, like the Thousand Years of Darkness, where the Dark God Fu Ling wins, or Empire of the Emerald Stars, which was basically L5R in space. But this was different. This wasn't an alternate timeline. This was an ending of the old timeline, abandoning it for a brand new timeline. It was a very risky choice because, on one hand, cleaning the slate could free the writers, not having them bogged down by decades of canon. But on the other hand, fans viewed it as a betrayal of all the hard work they did to help craft an interesting world together. Would Fantasy Flight's gamble work out? In 2017, Fantasy Flight's first L5R game hit the shops, the Living Card Game, or LCG. There's a full review of the game on this channel, but spoiler alert, I wasn't sold on it. It was a fiddly game with too much going on, which made casual play almost impossible. It was made for tournaments, not for the lunchroom. By 2020, the game died, and instead of the company taking responsibility for the mishandling, they blamed the pandemic. Oh, but Corey, the pandemic shut down card shops so they couldn't have their in-person games there. Yeah, but Magic the Gathering survived, Yu-Gi-Oh! Survived, because people would just go over to their friend's house and play the game because they thought it was a great game that they could just sit down and play a few hands of. L5R couldn't do that! That's my point! I'm so mad. I'm so mad at them. That's not to say there's not bright spots. The Battle of Rokugan board game was super fun! I loved it! I highly recommend playing if you can get a copy of it. But it didn't sell well, and it's now out of print. Then there's the RPG. Fantasy Flight tried to use the same formula they used with Star Wars to create an RPG with unique dice and mechanics that tried to expand the RPG just from a binary success-failure rule set. The game had great ambition to recreate the intrigue and battles of the samurai of L5R, and for the most part, succeeded. It's one of the few products still being produced today because the fans appreciated it. With the new timeline comes new novels, and most of them are pretty great. The Daidoji Shin books are highly recommended, as a samurai detective attempts to solve crimes in the magical L5R world. After the failure of the card game and the board game, something had to be done, and Fantasy Flight's parent company, Asmodee, decided to take Legend of the Five Rings and sublet it, licensing it out to other companies, with Edge Studio taking over the lion's share of it and becoming the stewards of the RPG. This is not the first time that the L5R license was given to another company for a short period of time. With the original card game, Wizards of the Coast produced a run of it. Yes, Wizards of the Coast. Edge Studios' first move was to create Adventures in Rokugan, another stab at marrying Legend of the Five Rings with Dungeons & Dragons rules. Dungeons & Dragons had hit a golden age during the pandemic, and Edge Studios felt it was time to reach out to potential new fans. Longtime fans were not impressed with this move, as Dungeons & Dragons isn't the best RPG for political intrigue and social drama. It felt like a huge step backwards. The good news was that the standard RPG would still be produced alongside it. And that brings us to today, and those current things happening at the time of this recording is the River of Gold board game created by Office Dog. And it was released with a series of stories and fan polls where the fans got to decide which clan comes out on top for this board game release. It was the Mantis. In the near future, there will be another board game called Clan War, and a strategy video game called Shadow Veil, which many people are cautiously optimistic for. It's true that it's a bumpy time for L5R, but I still love this game, no matter which canon is used. the core of its appeal is still intact. Samurai drama and competing factions. A place to find a new identity and get lost in a rich world. You have to understand, no matter L5R's history as an IP, what company owns it, or what the new product is, none of that matters as much as your connection with it. One thing Fantasy Flight did right when they took over was to put less of a focus on huge wars, dark gods, and constantly killing and replacing the Emperor, and instead tried to make smaller stories more important, personal stories of honor, glory, intrigue, and drama. Us, the fans, can still find a place in this world and the amazing stories there. I cannot express this enough. This setting is rich, wonderful, and sexy. I love making a killer L5R deck or playing my favorite clan in the board game, and I absolutely love making characters and stories in the RPG and having a kick-ass time with my friends. I appreciate the time you spent with me today. This was a short history, but if there's details you think I missed, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. You can support my channel by joining my Patreon. Yes, there's L5R stuff, L5R RPG stuff on my Patreon for free. Until next time, I hope you get involved in the fandom, go read a novel, or make a Legend of the Five Rings character, and go roll some dice.